Breathing heavily, James kept his eyes on the dagger. He knew that things would be over if the two forest cats were to recover from being blinded, and he didn't have a weapon in hand. With how many wounds he had on his body, there was little chance that he'd be able to fight them off with just his bare hands. Reaching the dead forest cat, James gratefully pulled out the dagger. Checking the blade, he sighed in relief. There's nothing wrong with it. Quickly turning around, James saw the two monsters still struggling with the dirt in their eyes. Even with how much time had passed, they brushed their paws on their face. They tried in an attempt to clear away the obstruction. They were hissing and growling in pain. While the two monsters were rolling around, there was plenty of time to check his surroundings. I don't see any of the other monsters, James thought. Not seeing the forest cats that he left to Maya, he slowly became worried since he didn't hear Maya's bow. It was even worse that he didn't see her anywhere. Checking on the two forest cats, he determined that the risk was acceptable. The important thing was to find out if she was safe. Maya, where are you? James used his free hand to cup it next to his mouth. Aside from the growling of the cats, there was no other indication of anything alive around them. James could feel his heart begin to beat faster with worry. The problem now was whether to take care of the two monsters or look for his girlfriend. Maya! James yelled out again. Desperation began to show in his voice. He hobbled as he turned around. A twang was heard, followed immediately by a thump and a whine. A few seconds passed before there was a repeat of the sound. Hobbling towards the sound, James' eyes widened in alarm. Two arrows blossomed out of the bodies of the monsters, both motionless. James stared at the arrows before things slowly came together in his exhausted mind. Were you looking for me? Maya's voice called out. Turning his head, James smiled upon seeing Maya perfectly fine as she walked over with a smile while carrying his pack in one hand. But soon, the smile faded away upon Maya realizing how bad of a shape James was in. She rushed over to where he was barely standing. Babe! Maya yelled out. Realizing how he must have looked, James raised a hand in front of him. It just looks bad. I'm perfectly alright. With the adrenaline slowly beginning to wear off, all the injuries on his body began to demand attention. Setting James's pack on the ground and taking off her own pack, Maya began to rummage into his pack to find the first aid supplies. James dropped his dagger and began undoing the straps on his leather armor. Clenching his teeth, James could feel the wounds on his body protest with pain every time he moved the leather armor. Once he was finished, James began peeling off the armor. I can feel the leather sticking to my skin, he gritted his teeth. The blood from the wounds, having dried, acted like an adhesive, even with him having a shirt underneath. He heard a gasp from Maya when he removed one side of his armor. Looking down at himself, James realized what the gasp was for. All over his shirt was blood, nearly covering it entirely. I guess it really does look worse than it actually is, James joked as he finished removing the rest of the armor. Looking at Maya, he saw that she was scowling at him. That's not funny, she yelled at him. Her arm twitched as though she was going to hit him on his chest, but stopping due to how injured he was. James chuckled but winced from the pain. You deserve that, Maya said, giving him no sympathy. He winced in pain as his body reminded him that there was nothing alright with his condition.